Hi again, everyone. We're here with Mike Gerlich, who's going to be telling us about his book, Swords of the Round Table, telling us about everything he does in comic books, basically. So say hello to Mike. Hello.
Hey everyone. Hey David.
How
Thanks for
you
having
doing?
me.
No, not a problem. So obviously we've had a bit of a chat beforehand, but people haven't actually seen that. So we might end up going over a few things we already said, if you don't mind. But before we do, just tell us a little bit about yourself and all the other people involved in creating the book.
Sure. So I'm Mike. I've been involved in art for a very long time. I began studying art in high school. I went to college for illustration, and in college I started working in comics. I was part of the Marvel bullpen.
Okay.
Um, I was working as an intern, and they really liked me, and they offered me a job while I was in school, but I didn't want to quit school. And then by the time I graduated, we kind of hit the Great Recession here, and they put a
Okay.
hold on firing and laid everyone off. So I wound up working in like different comic production jobs, and then I just had like a weird journeyman art career. Like I spent 10 years out of comics. I was doing newspaper production. From that, I went into graphic design and photo retouching. I did a lot of photo retouching. Photo retouching is how I mostly paid my bills, and then I got into architectural drafting.
Okay.
But
So
it all felt,
various.
yeah,
Yeah.
it all felt very hollow to me, and I just really liked comics. So the company I used to do production for, I got in contact with them. We always had a good relationship. They used to be New York based. I'm New York based, and they left. But whenever they would do shows in the area, they'd call me to see if I just wanted to lend a hand, help them out. So I told them, like, I was having problems. They're like, well, we'll give you regular freelance work in the auction. Like, it's an auction for comic art. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
if you want freelance work, doing the auction catalogs, we'll give it to you. And, that turned into it's a job again. Um, it's just like the most fantastic job ever, just seeing so much different comic art from
Sure, yeah, I can
different
imagine.
decades, different artists,
Yeah.
stuff I could never afford to own.
But you get
um,
you get to touch it and you get to feel it and you get to look at it for the
yeah,
time it's with you. So
and it's incredible because like when you see older comic art, they were just so visceral with it.
yeah.
Older pages, they have tears on them, they have whiteout and rubber cement everywhere. Um, no one really thought that this would be considered high art one day or valuable art one day. And, some of that stuff is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I started doing
Okay.
that, and then I got back into drawing comics and just illustration in general. So when I have time, I do some general illustration, but it's mostly comics now.
Okay. So you've been really around the world of various parts of various parts of comics. You kind of seen the whole spectrum of it, really.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, it sounds
yeah,
like to me it does.
on the indie level at least,
On the well, I think it sounds a little bit more than that, to be honest.
yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
being humble.
production's production.
Sure.
I got to do some art corrections or some cool stuff like, you know, um, when I first started, like, I was doing the digital inking of like Gene Colan's second to last comic book, Daredevil
Okay.
600.
Good.
So there's cool stuff like that, and there's other stuff like, so comic production was kind of cool back in those days. And it's cool now too. Don't get me wrong. It's just like,
Yeah.
I'm not doing stuff for
Different.
the actual comic books now that are going into print. I'm doing them production wise for things that are going to auction.
Okay. So, I mean, onto your book, comic book, Swords of the Round Table. What is it about?
So it's my take on Arthurian legend. I've always loved it, and I've taken the stories back to their historical 6th century roots, and it's very
Right.
much about a changing Britain. There's Brithic cultures that have remained kind of untouched. There are Romano-Brithic cultures, but now, Rome has fallen. The Roman influence is leaving. You have Germanic influences coming in. Um, the Irish influence is coming into what would later become Scotland. You have all these groups kind of fighting for control. and the identity, like there's an identity thing, like who's really British here?
Yeah,
Like
no, that's
what is the British history?
okay. So
But,
it's
yeah,
so
that's
you're
part of it.
kind of
It's also
steeped
fantasy
in the
and
cultures, I
adventure.
guess, that I come from, for a large part. And so you've steeped it's kind of built into the cultures that I come from a large part.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, okay.
and the history of them, because I find it to be a really interesting time period, sub-Roman Britain.
Yeah, well, it's funny we because Manchester was founded by the Romans, and there's a place in Manchester. It's just under a concrete bridge in a car park. It's a lump of what looks like a modern big mass of old concrete, and it just sits there covered in rubbish and surrounded by shrubs, and you can't really see it unless you're going to push through the shrubs. And it's one of the original foundation stones of Roman Manchester.
Yeah.
And it's been there for nearly 2,000 years because it's too big for anyone to move. So they've literally just built around it. It was just too big for them to move, and now it's recognised as this historical artifact, but it just sits under a bridge in a car park, and no one knows about it. So we can very much built on Rome here in Manchester. So that's really interesting. So what sort of reader is the book aimed at?
If you like Silver Age and Bronze Age comics,
Right.
and kind of 80s fantasy adventure, it's a book for you. Like it's a lot of talking, more so than fighting. Like the first issue is almost all. The first issue doesn't have a sword fight in it,
Right?
But the second and third issues
Okay.
have a lot more action. It's just I had to build this world and set it up, and it's a little different than other Arthurian legend because I've removed, for the most part, characters like Arthur and Merlin and Lancelot to focus on everyone.
Okay, so it's not going to be the characters people expect.
Yeah, well,
and of course sorry, go ahead. I was talking over you. Go ahead.
There's other like famous characters from the mythology, but I just thought those characters are everyone's so used to them. It'd be kind of interesting to tell the story without them.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. So what have been some of the most unexpected challenges and or rewards you've encountered creating this book or even previously?
Well, for this book, the biggest challenge was probably just staying on schedule because so much stuff can happen when you're trying to get a book done. I wound up having like severe allergy issues that required seeing several doctors, and it just kind of put me out for a while. But you still have deadlines.
Sure. So
that was kind of the very unexpected thing that just created challenges that I wasn't used to. It's also I would say I like the people I work with a lot. So I've got Peter Senzone, who is my letterer and co-editor.
Okay.
And Sabrina Poon, who's the interior colorist. Right. And it's interesting working with people. So I need them because I can't just do everything. Like I'm already writing, penciling, and inking, and co-editing. Like
I mean you're doing enough. I would say
I'm doing enough, and then the production. Like I'm the one who's getting everything ready for print and digital, and and then also trying to market it. So it's great having them, and I wish I had more help. But on the other hand, it's so hard for me to give up control of things that it's hard to have faith. But those two I trust very much. Like originally,
well, that's good. So you end up finding people that you trust, and
when I was originally looking for a colorist, I was having so many problems, and it was like I couldn't find someone I gelled with. And Sabrina came to me because I reached out to one of my old teachers to see if he had any recent graduates who wanted to start working in comics. And I was giving everyone samples, like paid sample tests, and she just grabbed some of my art off the internet and colored it. And I was like, well, first I have to pay you for doing that, and second, if you want the job at this rate, you're hired. So that's rewarding. I was rewarding meeting her.
No, that's great. It is interesting, isn't it? The connections you make, even though a lot of I don't know how you're set up, but I tend to be working with people I've never met in real life, and I've barely even spoken to in real life, and yet you end up making these good professional working relationships and even friendships. And and that can be, yeah, as you said, it's a surprising reward of the industry. Yeah. So this is the kind of offbeat question that you didn't know in advance. So if you could meet your main character in real life, what questions might they ask you?
Well,
You've written them.
The thing about that is they'd probably be speaking like an old form of Welsh or like
Well, probably.
Latin.
Let's assume for the sake of argument that you both speak the same language.
I don't know. So my story kind of has like 3 focus points.
Okay.
But I like to say the main character is Gawain.
Okay.
And I portray him as a really kind of brooding, sullen kind of guy who also feels like he's always got the weight of the world on the shoulder. So he'd probably be asking me like why I'm not doing enough, or like why am I not facing the world with more grit,
Right. Fair enough. All right. Well, I don't know how relevant this question is to your work, but we'll try. Can you tell me about a real life experience that's found its way into your storytelling?
Oh yeah. So back to Gawain. Part of the story is at this point he's loyal to Arthur and Wales, but his family they're the main family. Like he's Arthur's nephew.
Okay.
Which is historically usually true. He's usually Arthur's nephew. And in my story, I use the idea that his father was the kind of overking of what would be South Scotland. It's the Old North right now. His family is all rebels except for him. He's loyal to Arthur and his causes, but no one, loyal to Arthur really trusts him, and because they think he's in league with his family. And me and my family, we get along pretty well now. But when I was a teenager, especially my brother and I would have a lot of conflicting ideas, and more than one occasion we've come to blows.
Okay.
And
I presume it didn't go as far as setting up entire feudal societies against each other.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I presume it didn't go quite that far.
Not that far, but we certainly broke a lot of things, trying to break each other. But that's the thing Gawain has to deal with, and that's happening in issue 3. Like the setup to issue 2 is idealistic. Like on an ideological scale, he's fighting his brother Mordred, who's assumed the power in the Old North.
Right.
But in issue 3, he's coming blows to blows with his other brother Agravain, who's really physically intimidating. Like I do Gawain as a big guy. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'5". So I do Gawain as a pretty large looming figure. Like he stands almost a head above the other characters. And this guy Agravain's like bigger than him. He's like a big, monstrous, overdeveloped, superhero-looking kind of character. So they're coming to blows. They're gonna have a big battle scene, and that's kind of out of real life. That was like me and my brother a lot, and I'm the bigger one in that relationship. But he's pretty large. He's got some sort of Napoleon complex where he thinks he's very small, and he's close to 6 foot.
Right. Sounds quite small compared to you. I have a friend in California who's known as George the Giant, and he's 7'8" and big with it, and I'm 6 foot. I'm not huge, but I'm 6 foot tall, so I'm fairly reasonably tall. If you stand next to him, you're just like, even you would feel the same. You feel tiny next to him.
That's incredible. Like
he makes his living out of being George the Giant.
I was gonna say, because everyone always asks me when they see me and they're interested in my height, like, what sport do you play? Are you like, you play basketball? And I'm like, no, I like basketball, but I'm not a coordinator.
It takes being tall helps, but it's not the entirety of the game. Like I'm sure if I played basketball against 5 foot tall guys that know how to play basketball, a foot taller or not, they would walk all over me. They would ruin me. There's certain skills involved beyond being tall. Yeah, I know from having a few tall friends, there are certain cliches that I guess you have to put up with, right? So apart from that, apart from the height, what is something we might not know about you? See how I segued that professionally
Yeah.
into that question?
I really enjoy. I'm a stereotypical man's man, but I really enjoy
Okay,
nice scented candles. That's
there you
something
go.
you know about me.
Okay,
They
is
always
that
think
well,
I'm
okay?
joking when I say that.
No, I believe you. Well, I was going to actually ask you about how you first got into comic books, but you kind of already covered that. So
Well,
I'm gonna.
actually,
I mean, unless you want to cover it some more, that's absolutely fine.
I
If you,
actually got
yeah,
into comic books very, very young because I got into superheroes through transitive media. Like
okay,
when I was really little, um, Batman, the movie came out, the Michael Keaton one,
okay,
and
yeah,
that was just
yeah,
like a cultural phenomenon. And then this is gonna sound weird. Marvel had a lot of cabinet video games. And like, when I was like 4, the pizzeria by my house had Captain America and the Avengers, the arcade game.
oh,
And I would go there and like, my mom would give me a quarter or two. And that's how I really got into superheroes, was through transitive media. And I
that's
probably
interesting.
didn't start reading comics regularly till I was like, closer to 10. But I had this obsession with superheroes from a very young age.
But you see, you're exposed to them from a completely different. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a new kind of routine that I've heard before.
Yeah, and it's there's also like a bowling alley. They really don't exist in New York much anymore because the rents are too high. But there was one
Right.
by my dad's, and it had a Spider-Man arcade game that had, you could be Spider-Man or Namor the Submariner, which is
Right.
a really
Okay.
really really interesting. Um,
Yeah, it's an interesting choice, isn't it?
yeah, but it's the kind that kind of thing got me into the superheroes. So now I know who Spider-Man is. I know who Submariner is from the
Yeah.
Avengers game. I know Iron Man, the Human Torch, Hawkeye.
Yeah.
Like I said, Human Torch, and I meant the Vision. They were once the same guy almost. It's complicated, but that's how I got to know the characters. And then there was like a Punisher game, and you could play as Nick Fury, and I was just like, I like this Nick Fury guy.
Right. So yeah. So I mean, I'm going to add this question here. So did you know that when you were playing those games, that they were comic book characters, or did you play those games and then see the comic book on the shelf and go, "Oh, those are the guys from the arcade machines"?
No, I knew they were comics. I had an older cousin who liked comics, and he always had them around. And my mother didn't have comics when I was growing up, but she would tell me she read comics when I was a kid. And
Right.
there's a great story with that. She got into over censorship when I was a kid. Like
Okay.
she was reading these really, and it's weird because she was not a conservative woman, but she was reading all these like really conservative books about how their toys are killing a generation, and there's such a bad influence, like He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and Ninja Turtles are demonic.
Right. Yeah. You don't
So
get that in the UK, but I've seen that a lot in America.
yeah, it's really big in America.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she was like a wild hippie, so it's weird that she was like that looking back. But she had read comics as a kid, so she thought they were kind of safe. And 90s comics were really different than 60s comics.
Yeah,
So
they did. They did start to go a bit darker, didn't they?
yeah, so she bought me
Oh,
this
I can see.
Daredevil miniseries that they based the Netflix show on. Like it was written by Frank Miller and drawn by Junior
Yeah.
Junior. And it's about Daredevil and Elektra battling drug dealers and sex traffickers. And I never told my mom like this was a mature comic. I was like, oh,
No.
this is great, thank you. And then I would just like stay up all night rereading it. Like this is insane. Elektra just
No.
killed those guys.
I mean, I can imagine if you're, even if you've got the smallest little bit of conservative kind of bent about you, if you look at Hellraiser and Sandman and things, you're going to be,
Yeah, like
that is going to make you think, ooh, should my kids be reading? I mean, yeah, I think your kids should be reading this, but you might not if you're of that ilk.
yeah, but when I was that younger, I wouldn't have had the patience for those books. I
No,
didn't read the Vertigo books till I was older. Like
that's true.
it's for a time I was strictly superheroes. So now I kind of try to read all types of comics. I've really started enjoying horror comics. But when I was younger, like up until when I was in college, it was always the superhero that did it for me.
Yeah, I think for most of us that's true. I've never really got into the horror comic genre so much. There are a few areas I've dipped my toe in, but superheroes were always my baseline for what I wanted to read in comics. So okay, so without getting into spoilers, because we want you to do that, can you tell us about a scene or even just a moment in your book that really stands out to you?
There's a fun scene. Like I introduced a new character, and he's in Arthur's court, but again, like Arthur's not there, but he's in that court, and the story is Kay has assumed the position of running Arthur's kingdom for him and trying to stop a civil war.
Okay.
And some of the women in court are helping him behind the scenes, and they're introduced to a new character who's a distant cousin of Arthur. So he would have an interest in Arthur being dead, and he's also from Cornwall, which they're remaining neutral. And it's very different because it's not action based. It's like it's intense kind of drama. Because they're trying to figure him out, and they really can't. And there's a lot of tension, and he's a very interesting character.
Okay.
So it's different than stuff I've drawn previously because it's a different type of storytelling. Like, drawing an action scene's really easy because you could just make a fist really big and throw it in front, and that's dynamic looking. But when you have someone and they're talking about spycraft and they're looking over a book, or they're
finding ways of making it interesting.
Yeah,
visually. Yeah.
So I like how that's coming out so far.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to have a look. So we've got. Let's go to.
Yeah.
So these are.
Two.
That's from issue 2, and then we've got.
That's also issue 2. Oh, I forgot the word balloons on that one. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. It's nice to just see, just see the art as it is,
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously that's the latest cover. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the cover for issue 3.
Okay, and then we've got this is stuff you're just penciling at the moment.
Yeah, this is stuff I've penciled. I just started issue 3.
Okay.
So I'm doing pencils. They're still kind of a little loose, but since I ink it, sometimes I leave the pencils loose because I can kind of guess where. I kind of know where I'm going.
Well, we've got a little bit the kind of headband has got the kind of reminded me of Monkey. Remember that show? Yeah, it's because kind of there's a kind of sort of shade of Monkey about it. Yeah, so we're. Oh, you can see you've already started inking at the top there.
Yeah, well, that it's
Or is it inks?
I wanted to use an establishing shot that I used in the previous issue, so I literally just traced over, and I was like, if I'm tracing my own work, I might as well just trace it in a pen. There's no need to trace it in pencil because I've already drawn it.
Yeah, I see. That's nice. Yeah. Okay. That's some really nice pages. Let's go back to the cover. So when is this coming out?
The Kickstarter is gonna the preview is gonna start soon, but the Kickstarter is gonna start in October and run into the first week of November. Okay. And it should start shipping late November, early December.
Okay, great. And apart from that, what future projects are you excited about, and what can readers look forward to from you?
Well, I've got I'm also right now working on a page for a story for Warden Comics.
Right.
I can't talk too much about it because it's one of those NBA things.
Yeah, of course.
But
don't say anything that's gonna land you in trouble.
They're doing an anthology book, and it's all about octopuses, and I think I could talk about this because they made a public thing, they were doing that, submissions, and I don't know if I can share. I have the storyboards next to me, so
no, please, don't share stuff you shouldn't be sharing.
So I don't put much context in it.
Have to blur this out. If I get a panicked email tomorrow that says, "Please, can you blur it out?"
No, I think it will be fine.
Okay.
You know, because they said it's a thing about, you know, it's public knowledge that they're doing an anthology all
Okay.
about
Fair
octopuses
enough.
or octopi.
No, octopuses.
Octopuses. Okay.
Octopuses. Octopi. Yeah, octopi is the Greek form, but octopus is no. Octopi is the Roman, is the Latin, but octopus is a Greek word. So therefore, it's octopuses. Yeah, it's one of those. It's one of those little. It's one of those little pedantic corrections.
Yeah. So I'm working on that. I'm working on this. You know, I also have an anthology that you know, I publish. The thing is with that, it's you know, all the people I work with are in New York, and I have to pay them a page rate.
Right.
So it's hard to just build the capital for that book because, you know, the book I work on, the only things I'm really outsourcing are coloring and lettering. You know,
Right.
and not to downplay what my team's doing, but those are what you would consider professionally secondary art jobs.
Okay.
You know, and don't get me wrong, they're crucial to the team. Like
Sure.
I don't want to be doing what they're doing. And I think they're both very good at what they're doing. Like you saw those colored pages that Sabrina does.
Yeah, they're really good.
And you know, Peter does a great job with the lettering. But you know, with the idea of another anthology, and Peter writes in that other anthology, which is this book here, a book I do, Beyond Bounds.
Oh, nice.
You know, I have to pay Peter a different page rate as a writer. He's got an illustrator he likes to work with. I have to give him his page rate. There's a story that I write, but I don't illustrate.
It adds up, doesn't it? It begins to add up quite clearly. These artists all wanting to eat.
Yeah.
How dare they?
It's like, don't their landlords understand that, you know, they can't always make rent?
Okay, so with that in mind, actually, give me the 2-minute pitch of your upcoming book.
All right. So Swords of the Round Table is my own take on Arthurian legend, but I've returned the story to its 6th century roots.
Okay.
And it's a mix of historical fiction and fantasy adventure. And as the story progresses, there's going to be more and more characters in there who are based off of people who aren't from mythology, but actually from history. But you know, and I'm intertwining them. But if you like Silver and Bronze Age comics, it's a fun read. I try to use those storytelling sensibilities. And I'm saying "and on" a lot, and I only have 2 minutes. It's a fun action adventure comic. It's interesting characters. There's a diverse group of characters. You know, not everyone's just kind of like a walking cliche. I try to make the characters all be fleshed out humans. You know, they have their flaws, they have their strengths. But I like to think it's an interesting story and an interesting take on this mythology.
Okay, well, no, that was excellent.
Well, thank you.
So there it is, Swords of the Round Table. I'm going to try and bring it up again. There we go. So there's going to be, so the Kickstarter, you're saying the Kickstarter is starting in October?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so there's no Kickstarter pre-launch link as we're doing this interview, but hopefully by the time it comes out, there will be. So it's going to be below. And if it comes out after I put this video out, I'll edit the video and add it. So by the time you're watching this, there should be a link to it below. Okay. So I'm going to say thank you.
Oops, thanks for having me.
No, I'm going to say thank you to Mike for coming along. You've been great. Bye, Mike.
It's been a pleasure.
All right, guys. That was excellent. So I'll be adding all the links below. You can check out Mike's work. Get in there. Have a look. When the Kickstarter comes on, just buy it because it looks great. Thank you. See you all again.